July 3, 1932, United States Military Academy, West Point, New York. The knock came on the third day. Benjamin Davis had unpacked his trunk, arranged his quarters that seemed oddly spacious for a plebe, and reported for duty. The granite walls of West Point rose around him like battlements, gray and immutable, built to forge officers who would defend a nation. He was 17 years old. He had scored highest in his high school class. He had spent 2 years in Chicago securing this nomination, living alone in a city where he knew no one, just to earn the right to stand here. The morning air smelled of cut grass and river water. The Hudson rolled past below the bluffs, indifferent. Then the knock. 3 upperclassmen. Dressed gray. Faces like stone. "You're not supposed to be here." Not a question. A declaration. 6 words that would define the next 4 years. Blacks are not wanted at West Point. He stood at attention. Said nothing. What was there to say? He had known, of course, his father had warned him, his stepmother had prepared him, but knowing and experiencing are different countries. The door closed. The footsteps faded down the corridor. The silence that followed was not empty. It was deliberate. Calculated. A weapon sharpened by consensus. For the next 1,460 days, Benjamin O. Davis Jr. would be invisible. If this story of endurance and excellence already challenges what you thought you knew about American military history, stay with us. What happens next will redefine your understanding of courage entirely. Davis was not West Point's first black cadet. Henry Ocean Flipper had graduated in 1877, the Academy's first, enduring his own torments during Reconstruction. John Hanks Alexander followed in 1887. Charles Young in 1889. Then nothing. 4 decades of silence more profound than what Davis would face, because for 43 years the answer was simply no. No black cadets at all. The 20th century had dawned and West Point's doors remained closed. Until Benjamin Davis received his orders in the summer of 1932, the only black cadet of the class of 1936. His father, then a lieutenant colonel in the 9th Cavalry, had spent 33 years in uniform without commanding white troops, shuffled between ROTC assignments at historically black colleges, always competent, never given command. Davis Jr. had watched. He had learned. He knew what he was walking into. What he could not have known was the totality of it. The journey to West Point had required careful choreography. Oscar DePriest, the only black congressman in America, could nominate a cadet, but only from his Illinois district. So Davis left his family in Cleveland, moved to Chicago alone at 15, worked, studied, established residency. 2 years of solitude to earn an appointment. When the letter came, his stepmother Sadie asked him the question she always asked: why not a perfect score? Davis had learned long ago that 98% was not good enough. Nothing less than excellence would suffice. Nothing less than perfection would silence the critics. But at West Point, even perfection could not buy a single word. The train north from Grand Central followed the Hudson through the Highlands. He arrived July 1, 1932, the first day of Beast Barracks, the crucible that breaks plebes down before building them into cadets. Every new cadet suffers. Every plebe is hazed. But what awaited Davis was not hazing. It was erasure. His room assignment told him everything. While other plebes doubled and tripled up in cramped quarters, Davis was given a room designed for 2, sometimes 3. He unpacked alone. Ate alone. Walked to classes alone. The silence was not incidental. It was policy, unofficial but absolute. Cadets called it silencing, or being cut. Usually it was reserved for honor code violations. Cheating, lying, stealing. A punishment so severe that most cadets who endured it left within weeks. Davis had violated no code. His only transgression was his skin. Reveille at dawn. Formation. March to the mess hall. Inside, the great vaulted space echoed with the clatter of trays, the scrape of chairs, the low hum of conversation. Hundreds of cadets. Davis walked between the tables, tray in hand. Seats that had been empty a moment before were suddenly full. Tables with visible space were, upon his approach, declared full. He learned to arrive early, claim a corner, eat quickly, leave. No one spoke to him except in the line of duty. Tactical instructions only. Pass the salt was a courtesy too far. I was to be silenced solely because the cadets did not want blacks at West Point, he would write decades later. Their only purpose was to freeze me out. In the barracks he studied alone. In the halls, cadets stepped around him as though he were a piece of furniture. On the parade ground, they marched in formation, shoulders nearly touching, but left a buffer of space around Davis as though proximity might be contagious. He attended chapel, drills, inspections, lectures. He excelled in mathematics, in tactics, in everything the academy demanded. His grades climbed. His posture never wavered. And still no one spoke. At night, he lay in his oversized room and listened to laughter from down the hall. Camaraderie. Brotherhood. The very thing West Point claimed to build. Not for him. He took long runs through the Hudson Highlands. Miles alone on dirt roads, boots pounding rhythm into silence. He listened to his radio, a small luxury, a tether to a world beyond the gray walls. He wrote letters home, never mentioning the isolation, filling pages with optimism and determination. His father would have recognized the strategy: do not give them the satisfaction. Do not buckle. His stepmother would have recognized the arithmetic: excellence plus perseverance equals survival. But survival is not the same as living. In his second year, during a New Year's Eve dance in New York City, Davis met Agatha Scott, a schoolteacher from Connecticut. They danced. They talked. For the first time in months, someone outside his family looked him in the eye and saw him. A year later they met again. This time the connection held. Agatha became his anchor, his reminder that beyond the walls of West Point humanity still existed. They wrote letters. She visited when she could. And slowly she helped him see that the silence was not about him, it was about them. The cadets who refused to speak. The institution that tolerated cruelty dressed as discipline. Davis did not crack. He did not rage. He continued to excel. By his third year, even his tormentors could not ignore the evidence. He ranked in the top third of his class. He executed every drill flawlessly. He never missed an assignment, never shirked a duty. The silent treatment was supposed to drive him out. Instead, it forged him into something harder than the institution itself. The policy of silencing rested on a fiction, that if they simply pretended Davis did not exist, he would vanish. But Davis was not a ghost. He was flesh, bone, and iron will. And the longer the silence went on, the more obvious it became that he was winning. The curriculum at West Point was designed to break and remake men. Tactical exercises, weapons training, leadership theory. The academy's motto, duty, honor, country, was chiseled into stone, recited at ceremonies, drilled into every cadet. But for Davis the words rang hollow. Where was the honor in silence? Where was the duty in cruelty? His classmates claimed to be learning leadership while practicing cowardice. In 1935, during his senior year, Davis applied to join the Army Air Corps. He wanted to fly. He had wanted to fly since he was 13, since the day he watched a barnstorming pilot take off from Bolling Field in Washington and felt the pull of the sky. But the Air Corps did not accept black pilots. The rejection was swift and absolute. Pilots required intelligence, reflexes, courage, and the Air Corps, like the rest of the military, believed black men lacked all three. Davis did not argue. He knew the game. Prove them wrong. Show, don't tell. Wait for the door to crack, then kick it open. Graduation day, June 12, 1936. The long gray line assembled on the plain, the broad expanse of grass where generations of cadets had stood before them. Families filled the bleachers. Flags snapped in the wind. General John J. Pershing himself, the most decorated officer in American history, presided over the ceremony. When Benjamin O. Davis Jr.'s name was called, something unexpected happened. Applause. Not polite. Not perfunctory. Sustained. His classmates, the same men who had not spoken to him in 4 years, rose to their feet and clapped. It lasted long enough to become uncomfortable. Long enough to be undeniable. The Academy's yearbook, The Howitzer, printed a single line beneath his photograph. The courage and self-control required to endure 4 years of ostracism is beyond most of us to comprehend. He has conquered a problem incomparably more difficult than plebe year and won the sincere admiration of his classmates. Admiration. After 4 years of silence. After 1,460 days of pretending he did not exist. Davis stood on that platform, diploma in hand, commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Army. He had graduated 35th out of 276 cadets. Top 12%. Not just surviving. Thriving. But the applause felt less like redemption than acknowledgement of a wound that would never fully heal. They had broken no rule by silencing him. The Academy had permitted it, even encouraged it through inaction. And now they clapped, as though applause could erase 4 years of cruelty. Davis did not smile. He saluted. He walked off the platform. He married Agatha 3 weeks later. And he returned to an army that was, in many ways, more hostile than West Point had been. If you're beginning to understand the scale of what Davis endured, and what he still faced, Subscribe now because the next chapter of his story will show you what happens when excellence refuses to be silenced. Fort Benning, Georgia. Summer 1936. Davis reported for duty as a second lieutenant in the 24th Infantry Regiment, one of the Army's historic black units. He walked into the officers' club. The conversation stopped. A lieutenant colonel approached. "You're not welcome here." "Not again." The same words. Different place. Same poison. Davis turned and walked out. He did not file a complaint. He did not protest. He knew that to fight every battle was to lose the war. Pick your fights. Save your energy. Prove them wrong by being undeniable. The Army, like West Point, operated under a de facto policy. Black officers could not command white troops. It did not matter that Davis had graduated from the nation's most elite military academy. It did not matter that his father was, by now, a full colonel. The rules were unwritten but absolute. So the Army did what it always did with black officers who could not be ignored. It made them professors. In 1938, Davis was assigned to teach military science and tactics at the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, the same position his father had held decades earlier. It was a demotion disguised as an assignment. A waste of talent disguised as service. But Tuskegee would prove to be more than a backwater. It would become the crucible for the most famous unit of black pilots in American history. In 1940, as war clouds gathered over Europe, President Franklin D. Roosevelt faced a political problem. Black voters were crucial to his re-election campaign, and black leaders were demanding change. The military remained segregated, its ranks swollen with black soldiers relegated to labor battalions and support roles. Black officers were a rarity. Black generals did not exist. On October 25, 1940, 5 days before the election, Roosevelt promoted Benjamin O. Davis Sr. to Brigadier General. The first black general in United States military history. The announcement made headlines. The symbolism was undeniable. But symbolism without substance is just theater. And Davis Sr. knew it. He had spent 41 years in uniform, shunted between assignments designed to keep him away from command, and now he wore a star on his shoulder. He was 60 years old. He had 5 years before mandatory retirement. The promotion was real, but it was also a calculation. Davis Jr. watched his father's promotion with pride and clarity. The door had cracked. Now it was his turn to kick it open. In 1941, with the United States on the brink of war, the Army Air Corps announced the formation of an all-black flying unit. The 99th Pursuit Squadron would train at Tuskegee Army Airfield in Alabama. The decision was not made out of idealism. It was a response to political pressure and a test. Could black men fly combat aircraft? Could they fight? The military brass did not believe so. Neither did much of white America. The prevailing belief, rooted in pseudoscience and bigotry, was that black men lacked the intelligence, reflexes, and discipline required for aerial combat. The 99th was set up to fail. Captain Benjamin O. Davis Jr. was among the first 13 cadets. He had waited 5 years for this. 5 years of teaching ROTC at Tuskegee, 5 years of watching mediocrity promoted over excellence, 5 years of biting his tongue. Now he was going to fly. The training was brutal. Cadets washed out by the dozen. The standards were higher for black pilots than for white ones. Everyone knew it, no one admitted it. Davis flew the P-39 Airacobra, the P-40 Warhawk, the P-47 Thunderbolt, the P-51 Mustang. He mastered them all. And in 1943 he was promoted to lieutenant colonel and given command of the 332nd Fighter Group, the unit that would become known as the Red Tails. Europe. 1943. The skies over Italy and Germany were a killing field. Luftwaffe pilots were among the best in the world. American bomber crews flew deep into enemy territory, vulnerable to fighters, to flak, to mechanical failure. Losses were staggering. The 332nd Fighter Group arrived in Italy with something to prove. Every mission was a test. Every sortie was scrutinized. And the Red Tails knew that failure would be generalized, success individualized. If they failed, all black pilots would be blamed. If they succeeded, they might earn a footnote. They did not fail. The 332nd flew escort missions for B-17 and B-24 bombers, protecting them from enemy fighters on long-range missions over Germany. It was dangerous work. Fighter pilots typically sought glory in dogfights, racking up kills. But the Red Tails had a different mission: stick with the bombers. Protect them. Bring them home. And they did. Mission after mission. The bombers they escorted suffered fewer losses than those escorted by other groups. Crews began to request the Red Tails specifically. They recognized the distinctive red-painted tails from miles away. When the red tails appeared, the bomber crews exhaled. They were going to make it home. In January 1944, the red tails shot down 12 German planes in 2 days. The performance silenced critics, at least temporarily. But even as the 332nd racked up successes, senior officers in the Army Air Forces tried to shut them down. A report was submitted to General George Marshall recommending that the 99th Squadron, Davis's old unit, be removed from combat. The report claimed the unit had performed poorly. Davis was furious. He had never been told of any deficiencies. He held a press conference at the Pentagon, a black officer challenging white generals in public. It was unheard of. He presented his case to a War Department committee. He demanded an inquiry. Marshall, to his credit, ordered one. And the inquiry found that the 99th's performance was comparable to other squadrons. The attempt to disband the unit quietly died. But the message was clear. Excellence was not enough. Davis and his men would have to be perfect. And even then they would be questioned. By the end of the war, the Tuskegee Airmen had flown over 15,000 sorties. They had earned over 850 medals. They had destroyed over 112 enemy aircraft in the air and another 150 on the ground. And in all their escort missions they never lost a bomber to enemy fighters. Not one. After the war, Davis remained in the newly formed United States Air Force. He was no longer in the Army. The Air Force was a new branch and it was the first to integrate. In 1948, President Harry S. Truman signed Executive Order 9981, mandating the desegregation of the armed forces. Davis helped draft the Air Force's implementation plan. The walls were coming down. Slowly. Unevenly. But they were coming down. Davis rose through the ranks. He served in the Pentagon, in Europe, in Asia. He commanded the 13th Air Force in the Philippines. He was promoted to Brigadier General in 1954, the first black general in the Air Force. Then Major General. Then Lieutenant General. He served for 37 years. And in 1998, at the age of 85, President Bill Clinton advanced him to 4-star general. It was an honorary promotion, a recognition that Davis had earned the rank decades earlier but had been denied it because of the color of his skin. Davis stood in the White House, flanked by his family, and accepted the 4th star. He did not smile. He nodded. He had spent his life waiting for institutions to catch up to him. Clinton said, "General Davis is here today as proof that a person can overcome adversity and discrimination, achieve great things, turn skeptics into believers, and through example and perseverance, one person can bring truly amazing change." Davis died on July 4, 2002 at the age of 89. He was buried at Arlington National Cemetery. A P-51 Mustang, painted red, flew over his funeral. In 2017, West Point dedicated Davis Barracks, a new cadet residence named in his honor. It was the first time the Academy had named a building after a black graduate. The barracks stands 6 stories tall, houses 650 cadets, and its granite exterior matches the Gothic chapel that looms above. It is a monument. But it is also an admission. For 4 years, West Point had tried to make Benjamin Davis invisible. For 4 years, his classmates had refused to acknowledge his existence. And now his name is carved into the stone of the institution that tried to erase him. Colonel Ty Segel, head of West Point's history department, said at the dedication, "If you want to know what duty, honor, country look like, just read a little bit about Benjamin O. Davis Jr., and your jaw will drop because he is the epitome of what we want at a time when we didn't know what right looked like." A beautiful sentiment. A true one. But also a painful one. Because West Point did know what was right. The cadets who silenced Davis knew. The administrators who permitted it knew. They simply chose cowardice over courage. Davis knew too. And he chose the harder path. If this story has shown you the cost of courage and the power of perseverance, subscribe, because understanding history like this is how we build a future worthy of those who fought for it. There is a photograph from 1936, taken on graduation day. Benjamin O. Davis Jr. stands in full dress uniform, chin high, eyes forward. He is alone in the frame. No classmates beside him. No one's arm draped over his shoulder. Just Davis, standing at attention, holding a diploma that cost him more than most of us will ever understand. He looks young. He looks tired. But mostly he looks unbroken. In his autobiography, written more than 50 years later, Davis reflected on his time at West Point. He did not express bitterness. He did not call for revenge. He wrote, "What they did not realize was that I was stubborn enough to put up with their treatment to reach the goal I had come to attain. Stubborn. Not heroic. Not noble. Just stubborn. But stubbornness, in the face of institutionalized hatred, is its own kind of heroism. And refusal to buckle when every force conspires to break you, is its own kind of nobility. The story of Benjamin O. Davis Jr. is not a story of kindness. It is not a story of sudden reversals, of guards offering cigarettes, of unexpected decency. It is a story of silence and endurance. Of a young man who stood at attention for 4 years while the institution that claimed to teach honor practiced cruelty. It is also a story of victory. Not the easy kind. Not the kind where the good guys win and the bad guys repent. But the kind where excellence becomes undeniable. Where performance shatters prejudice. Where one person standing alone refuses to disappear. Davis did not wait for permission. He did not wait for acceptance. He simply did the work. And in doing so, he forced the door open not just for himself, but for every black officer who came after him. The Tuskegee Airmen. The integration of the armed forces. The end of official segregation. None of it was inevitable. All of it required people like Davis. People who endured the silence, who absorbed the hatred, who kept walking forward even when no one else would walk beside them. In 2019, the United States Air Force Academy named its airfield after Benjamin O. Davis Jr. Pilots taking off from Colorado Springs now depart from Davis Airfield, named for a man who was told he would never fly. In 1997, the U.S. Postal Service issued a stamp honoring his father, Benjamin O. Davis Sr., the first black general. In 2020, the Army named a conference room at the Pentagon in his honor. Buildings, stamps, ceremonies. These are the ways institutions apologize without saying sorry. Davis never asked for an apology. He asked for a chance. And when he was given one, he seized it with both hands and refused to let go. There is a lesson here buried beneath the history. It is not a comfortable lesson. It is not the lesson we want to hear. The lesson is this: institutions do not change because they suddenly become moral. They change because people like Benjamin Davis force them to. They change because someone, somewhere, refuses to accept the silence. Refuses to disappear. Refuses to buckle. The applause on graduation day was not redemption. It was recognition. And recognition, while better than nothing, is not the same as justice. But Davis did not wait for justice. He built it. One mission at a time. One flight at a time. One cadet at a time. And now, decades after his death, his name is carved into stone at the institutions that tried to break him. Not because they loved him, but because he was undeniable. West Point still teaches duty, honor, country. The words are still chiseled into stone. Cadets still recite them. But now, when they walk past Davis Barracks, they are forced to confront a question. What does honor look like when it costs you everything? Benjamin O. Davis Jr. answered that question every day for 4 years. He answered it again in the skies over Europe. He answered it for 37 years in uniform. The answer is simple. And it is hard. Honor looks like showing up. Even when no one speaks to you. Even when no one sees you. Even when the institution you serve does not serve you back. Honor looks like excellence in the face of hatred. Dignity in the face of cruelty. Persistence in the face of silence. Honor looks like Benjamin O. Davis Jr., standing alone on graduation day, holding a diploma no one thought he would earn. He did not smile. He did not weep. He stood at attention. And in that moment he was not invisible. He never had been. The Academy gave him silence. He gave them history.